Hey, Troy Bishop again. So we're at Taylor's new horse farm. Carol, my former student teacher, I'm going to keep plugging that, is out here, and we're going to do some soil testing. So what we're panning right now is what the field looks like. And so when you begin your soil testing regimen as a student, you should find out what this soil is. So you can do that by going to the Web Soil Survey from NRCS, where your coordinates is, and it'll give you what kind of soil is right here. And then you're going to need to know that for when we take the soil sample and send it into the lab. So when I'm looking at this field, how I'm going to soil sample it, generally I'm going to walk in a W pattern or maybe a V, and I'm going to try to stay off the sharp hillsides and the deep valleys. I want a representative sample. So how many acres is this field?
About 20.
No, the hay field.
Oh, the hay field is 8.
8. So what I would recommend is probably 10 soil samples. So we're looking at screwing this in the ground and getting a core. What I would say is 10 would be the minimum. If you want a better, more accurate reading, take more. You're going to put the soil in the bucket anyway and mix it all up, and you're only going to give a small sample to the lab. So more is better if you choose to do that. If you take less samples, it's going to be less accurate. So depending on what you want to achieve. So this is a good representative. I'm going to stay mostly on the flats. I'm going to try to hit where, and then I'm going to stay away from those hedgerows, because the soil is going to be a little bit different over there because it hasn't been impacted by the corn that was previously here. So let's go take a soil sample. Okay, I'm back here taking a soil test. So you want a fairly clean probe, a clean bucket, because you don't want to get contaminated by another soil sample. So we use this type of probe here in Madison County because a lot of our soils are too gravelly or too shaley to use a probe, and when we take the probe and get the core out, it falls apart and we can't put it in a bucket. So we generally use these. So when you're going for a soil sample, if you're in a pasture, you're basically farming probably 6 inches. If you're in a hay field, maybe you'll be looking at 6 to 8. So this is basically what we're trying to get as a core. Okay, so no big surprise. You screw it in the ground and you hope for the best. Okay, so I've already broke a couple of these because, when it's really dry, you're trying to pull it out of the ground, you screw it in, you take it out, and this is what you get. Okay, it's not brain surgery. So then you take this and you basically funnel it into the bucket. Why do I need to put it in the bucket? Well, because you're going to do this 10 to 20 times on this 8 acres. Okay, and you're going to fill this bucket up. Okay, so we're going to go fill the bucket. Hey, we're back here, and I just took soil samples of the field in this bucket, and I also dove the shovel in just to check it out. So taking a soil test is all about learning. So if you're taking a test, you might as well bring a shovel and learn what is happening. So what we have at Taylor's farm is we have really nice plants going really easily into the first 4 or 5 inches. This is where the organic matter lies. This is where the root hairs are, and it smells good. It smells like soil. And so when we looked at that penetrometer only going down 4 inches or so before we hit this hard pan, is we have this plow layer is what I'm going to call it, and it's hard, right? It's not crumbly like cottage cheese. And believe it or not, the plants, it's a distinct layer between the plow pan and where the roots stop. And so what we need is, we need to work on that. So we can work on it with fertility, with plant roots. So there's a diverse plant base in here that'll puncture that. We could maybe do some aeration, some other things to get the air and get this organic matter infused into this kind of stop, like it's the wall. I'm hitting the wall here. But there's a lot to discover. One of the things that I look at for healthy soil is how many worms per shovelful. So I know this seems crazy, but the standard, if it's awesome biologically active soil, we talk about 20 worms per shovelful, 20. And so I only found one. So just doing this activity, if you go around your farm or your pastures and you have 15 or 10, that's better than one. More earthworms are incorporating this cottage cheese into that substrate. So this has been in corn for quite a while and it's been plowed, and so maybe that's the reason that there aren't as many worms. I don't know how much animal manure has been put on this field. I believe that once you get your plants growing in a diverse fashion and get some horse manure and things on it, that the worms will come. Like they make a house and it'll show up. So those are, you should be playing around with your soil. So here I am with the bucket, and I've gone down appropriately. And so to make this sample good for the lab, we basically take this 10 to 20 samples and we just mix, right? And you don't have to get crazy. You don't have to make them all fine and dandy. You can do one of these and you can do a little dance. Dun, 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 dun. Can we do the rumba or something? Dun, 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 dun. So we're gonna make it so we can put it in the bag, because we're gonna take a bunch more samples from the other fields potentially, and so we need to do a kind of a rough, like, oh, what kind of bag do I use? You can use a Ziploc bag. We have these fancy bags, you know, with the little things on here. So look, you put them in here. This is very technical.
You like that?
Oh, just so generally speaking, this is the size of the sample. So you're going to do a lot of work. You're going to take a lot of cores, and when you mix it up, that's all you're going to have to show them. So you're going to have this number 1, 2, whatever your field name is, and then you go and do the next field and the next field. So we basically kind of do one of these, throw it in the bag, move to the next field. And so we're gonna impart some wisdom by, okay, what do we have to do to get this to the lab? We're gonna do some paperwork. We're gonna learn about that process.
Okay. We're good.
Okay, we've harvested the soil samples. We've processed them in a bag, and now we're gonna make some paperwork to send into the lab. So that's where we're at. So the lab, and in our case, we're using Dairy One Agronomy Services in Ithaca. And so they have a thing online that you got to fill out. So here's an example. So you need your identification, which we have Taylor's. What you're going to have to do is find out what your soil type is. And so if you go to the Soil Web Survey and where your location is, you can find that information. And then you have to tell them your previous crop. So in this example, there was corn previous to alfalfa. Then crops to be grown. So in this case, we're talking about hay or pasture. So there's codes at the Dairy One website that they use. Like pasture, I believe, is PAS. And then there's some other information about how you manage, how deep did you take the sample, was there manure applied, is there artificial drainage, meaning is there tile? And then there's these packages. So down here you can choose what kind of sample you want from the lab. So there's a standard, which is like $9. I think that's what that is. And then there's a standard plus that will give you minerals, and then there's some other ones. Basically between 10 and 15 bucks for a sample. So what they want at the lab is to take this rough sample that we've got and pour it in this bag, and then you mark your name and your field number and stuff, and then they tell you how far to fill it up and where to send it. So you probably send it through the mail. So at the end of the day, in a couple weeks, you'll get this report. So here's this Dairy One report. It's actually of my farm. And so immediately I gravitate to something easy. So they have this graph. So they have phosphorus, potassium, and the calcium, magnesium, which are your macronutrients. And so I'm in the high range for these, and I'm very low on phosphorus. So that looks like a place I need to concentrate. Then over here they have the pH. So that's another important concept. 6.8. To grow grass or hay, you need something over 6.2. Or the organic matter is something I look at. So I kind of go boom, boom, boom. Organic matter is super important. It holds moisture, builds fertility. It's awesome. So then down here they'll have other nutrients that are available in your soil, and then they'll give you recommendations on what you wrote down you want to have for your production. So that's here. And a lot of that is based on your soil type. There's only so much your soil can do at full fertility. And so you're going to get this information and you're going to go, well, okay, what am I supposed to do with it? How do I interpret it? Okay, so you could go to Google and you could type in interpretation, which you could get some stuff from that. You could talk to a professional, a consultant, your agronomy teacher, a farmer that knows how to interpret that, and he'll give you what he thinks you need. And then there's that whole talk. The option is, okay, so you have this information, and I don't have any money, or I have very little money. Which do I concentrate on most? Generally, lime would be high on my list, because if you got good pH, when you do put fertilizer or animal manures on, they won't bind up in the soil from being acid. So that's an input you can put on that's going to last 5 to 7 years. So it's not a one and done. So interpreting it is something you kind of have to learn. This just gives you a baseline of where you're at. And so when you do put fertilizer on, or you do practices that help your fields, you want to take another sample later on to see how it helped. So it's a verification tool. And hopefully you got something out of this, and I'm signing off. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy.